Religion has been the cornerstone of society since the beginning. It can be used to build up communities or help others, but there are some groups who use their twisted methods in the name of their religion for their own gains. Here are 3 of the most deadly cults you've never heard of. Founded in 1984 in Geneva, Switzerland by Luc Jouret and Joseph de Membro, the Order of the Solar Temple is a cult that believes that the Knights Templar is the key to salvation. The OST is an offshoot of a secret society called the Ancient Mystical Order of Rose Crucis, where Jouret and de Membro met. Mixing early Christian beliefs, UFO religion, and the New Age philosophies, the cult taught that death was an illusion and that after a person died, they would be transported to a different planet. De Membro even managed to convince members to believe that he was a reincarnated member of the Knights Templar and that his daughter Emmanuelle was the cosmic child that would lead them after death to be reborn on the planet that orbits the star Sirius. Jouret styled himself as a healer and wanted the cult to practically worship him. Jouret firmly believed that the world was headed towards environmental catastrophes and went on and on about the final end of the world. He led elaborate and bizarre rituals that required female members to sleep with him before the rituals took place. De Membro, on the other hand, acted as the mysterious Grand Master with magical abilities of the sword Excalibur. De Membro would break up already married couples to match them with other group members and call it a cosmic pairing. He was also paranoid and feared impurities, so all members had to wash multiple times daily to protect against Earth radiation. Both Jouret and de Membro were investigated by Canadian law enforcement. It was believed that the pair used the cult as a front to traffic arms and launder money. Quebec cult member Tony Dutoit became disillusioned with the OST after he learned that Jouret had misappropriated church funds. Tony spoke out publicly against Jouret and the OST. The criticism made the cult leader furious. Jouret declared that Dutoit's infant son was the Antichrist and sent an assassin from Switzerland to Quebec. On September 30th, 1994, Tony Dutoit, his wife Nikki, and his 3-month-old son Emmanuel were lured by church members to meet at the OST's chalet. All 3 were found dead from multiple stab wounds. Tony had been bludgeoned, his throat was slashed from ear to ear, and he had been stabbed 50 times. His wife Nikki had been stabbed 13 times, and his infant son had been wrapped in a black plastic bag and stabbed 6 times with a wooden stake. 5 days later, Swiss firefighters responded to a fire on the OST chalet in Freiburg, only to find the grisly scene of 22 dead, many dressed in ceremonial robes and laid out in a star shape. Hours later, firefighters were called to another one of the OST's properties in Valais, where 25 bodies, including 4 children, were found. Luc Jouret, Joseph de Membro, and his 12-year-old cosmic child Emmanuelle were among the dead. The deaths of their founders didn't stop members from following in their footsteps. In 1995, 16 more people died in a murder-suicide ritual in France. Like their Swiss counterparts, they had placed themselves into a star shape. The last 5 suicides occurred in 1997 near Quebec City. Firefighters were called to a home, and as they fought the fire, 3 children were found alive in a woodshed. They explained that they were able to convince their parents that they didn't want to die and were a part of a failed suicide attempt 2 days prior. In the end, 74 people are reported to have died due to the cult. At its height in the 80s and 90s, the OST had between 400 and 500 members worldwide. Today, that number has dwindled to around 30. Considered one of the most deadly cults in China, Eastern Lightning is known for kidnapping, torturing, and murdering people that don't agree with their brand of Christianity. Founded by Zhao Wei-san in 1990, the Doomsday Cult teaches that a middle-aged woman is the second coming of Christ, and that she will guide mankind into a third age of judgment and salvation. Eastern Lightning isn't Zhao Wei-san's first rodeo belonging to a banned cult. In the 80s, he was part of a radical religious group called the Shouters in Heilongjiang province. When authorities broke up that sect in 1989, Zhao abandoned his family and fled to Henan province. It was there where he met a woman named Yang Xingbin, who wrote a book called The World in the Flesh. She called herself Almighty God. He then declared that she was the second coming of Christ and founded the Church of Almighty God. The cult became known as Eastern Lightning due to its followers' interpretation of the Bible verse, "For as lightning that comes from the east is visible in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man." The cult has earned the anger of the Chinese government and has been banned since 1995. One of the main tenets of the group is that the Chinese Communist Party is Satan and refers to them as the Great Red Dragon. Zealous in their beliefs, cult members have been accused of being the cause of a rash of robberies and assaults that left victims with slashed ears and broken limbs. One of the cult's strategies to gain members is to infiltrate and co-opt other churches. Suppression of churches and new religious groups by the Chinese government in the 1980s caused many of these groups to go underground and become secretive. These factors contributed to Eastern Lightning's ability to co-opt many religious groups. Eastern Lightning is known to use violence and blackmail to absorb entire churches into their fold. In 2002, the group allegedly posed as members of a theological institute from Singapore and kidnapped 34 evangelical Christian leaders and held them hostage for 2 months trying to convert them. Due to the cult's secrecy, there is no accurate number of how many members there are. It is estimated there are up to 1 million to 10 million Eastern Lightning followers. As the years went on, Eastern Lightning grew in their fanaticism and became deadly. In 2010, followers killed an elementary school student and carved a lightning bolt into his foot. Investigators later discovered that the boy was the nephew of a cult member that spoke openly about leaving. Their reign of terror continued on into 2012. While the world focused on the Mayan apocalyptic predictions, Eastern Lightning passed out propaganda and spread rumors about the end of the world. They are reported to be responsible for over 40 riots that broke out all over China in December. Ultimately, hundreds of cult members were arrested. Despite of all the vicious crimes that Eastern Lightning has committed or has been accused of committing, they did not gain world attention until 2014 when the brutal attack of 37-year-old Wu Shouyan was caught on tape. 5 cult members were harassing customers at a McDonald's and demanding that they write down their phone numbers. When Wu refused, she was viciously beaten with a mop handle and stomped in front of her 7-year-old son and horrified customers. She would later die from her injuries. Since then, 2 of the attackers have been executed. Xiao Wusan and Yang Jingben fled to Chinatown, New York in 2000 due to religious persecution. The pair still lead their cult and continue to spread their religious zealotry to the masses. The Nation of Yahweh is a black separatist group founded in Miami, Florida in 1979. They believe that white people are evil and that blacks must separate themselves from white culture. The group's founder, Hewlin Mitchell Jr., was born in Oklahoma in 1935 and was the son of a preacher. After serving in the military and graduating law school, Mitchell moved to Atlanta in the 1960s to join the Nation of Islam. He soon left after he was accused of pedophilia and embezzlement. Mitchell hopped from church to church, styling himself as a faith healer before leaving Atlanta in 1978 after the murder of his business partner and was sued for fraud by his congregation at the Modern Christian Church. Yahweh taught that the 12 apostles were black, that whites were evil, and that all blacks were a part of the lost tribe of Israel. Originally, the Nation of Yahweh taught traditional Christian values as well as encouraged children to stay away from drugs. At its height in the 80s, the cult had over 12,000 members and was praised for revitalizing blighted Miami neighborhoods. He opened and ran several businesses, including a brewery, a food distribution firm, and a housing agency. The charismatic leader was even given the key to the city in 1987 and had his own local holiday, Yahweh Ben Yahweh Day. What the public didn't know was that the Nation of Yahweh had a sinister side. Yahweh taught hatred and violence towards whites and Jews and preached religious separatism for blacks. To become a member of his inner circle, a hopeful will have to kill a white person and bring back a body part like a finger or ear in order to prove the kill. The cult was connected to 24 vicious murders and allegedly firebombed a Delray Beach neighborhood after residents refused to donate to soliciting cult members. As the cult grew in the 1980s, Yahweh convinced many of his members to sell their homes and properties to live in a dirty warehouse spanning almost a city block that he would later call the Temple of Love. Yahweh encouraged members to give up all of their old lives and families to focus on him and the cult. He told men to stop shaving and women to stop straightening their hair. He formed the Circle of 10, a group of men that carried heavy wooden staffs to keep the other members in line. Yahweh wanted to control every moment of his members' lives. Children were taken out of public schools and taught Yahweh's twisted versions of history and social matters. One member's mentally ill son was kept in a cage hung in the air because Yahweh believed that the child had the devil in him. He denied female members birth control and encouraged boys to start having sex as soon as they hit puberty because he wanted his group to multiply and fast. He also had his own brand of sex ed. Separating the men from the women, he showed pornographic movies to men of white women having sex with animals to discourage them from lusting after white women. He also personally checked male genitalia and would personally circumcise members who weren't already circumcised. After reading books about pregnancy and midwives, he gave lessons on using a douche and taught that in order to give CPR to a child, a volunteer would have to blow into a woman's vagina. While he claimed to be celibate, many members reported the sexual abuse he inflicted upon women and girls, some as young as the age of 10. Although Yahweh ruled with an iron fist, there were at least 10 members that grew disillusioned with Yahweh and secretly met at a member's home that didn't live in the Temple of Love. Yahweh learned about these meetings and excommunicated them. However, he wasn't satisfied and began preaching that those that left the group were his enemies. The cult's first victim was Ashton Green, a Sunday school teacher that left the group. He had friends and would frequently visit the Temple of Love. During one of his visits on November 13, 1981, the Circle of 10 intercepted him and took him to the back of the temple. They beat him with sticks until he was a bloody mess and then drove him to the Florida Everglades. They placed his neck on a rock and slowly decapitated him with a dull machete. 3 days later, members Carlton Carey and Mildred Banks were attacked outside of their home. Carey was shot in the neck and would later die from his injuries. Banks was shot and slashed with a machete, but she managed to survive by playing dead. In 1983, karate expert Leonard Dupree would be the next to lose his life because he crossed Yahweh. The 22-year-old gained the attention of group elders because he was constantly daydreaming in class and wandering around. Soon, rumors would spread amongst the followers that Dupree was an assassin. Yahweh gathered a frenzy group around Dupree, and someone hit Dupree over the head with a tire iron. Yahweh made every man, woman, and child strike at the injured Dupree until he was dead. They wrapped his body in a carpet and threw him into a canal. His body was never found. Yahweh's Circle of 10 splintered off to form the Death Angels, a group that was tasked with killing Yahweh's enemies. The Death Angels' most effective killer was former NFL player Robert Rozier. Robert Rozier joined the group in 1982 and quickly impressed elders while working at the group's brewery. Rozier was a favorite of Yahweh, and he would later admit that he killed 7 white devils in the name of Yahweh ben Yahweh. After nearly a decade investigation, Yahweh ben Yahweh and 16 of his disciples were arrested and charged with murder, conspiracy, and racketeering. Over a dozen of his former followers, including Robert Rozier, testified against Yahweh. In the 5-month trial. There were over 160 witnesses who would go on to testify about the brutal killings and treatment of cult members. After 5 days of deliberating, the racially mixed jury acquitted 7 members, convicted 7 of conspiracy, and 2 were declared mistrials because the jury could not agree on a verdict. Yahweh himself was convicted of conspiracy and sentenced to just 10 years in prison. In 2001, Yahweh was released from prison, where he continued to lead the last remnants of his cult until his death in 2007 at the age of 65. Hi guys, this is the Twin Files. We really liked making this video. One of our experiences with this is that our mom actually knew somebody that was a part of the Yahweh ben Yahweh cult, so that was made us interested in making a video like this. How about you guys? Have you ever had any experience with cults? Any family members? Let us know in the comments. Thanks again. Please subscribe and don't forget to like our video.